Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, the guys would like you to stop drilling right now. Let's pull the rods out. Let's clean out the filings, make sure everything goes in a bag, and see what we can see.
The wind howled across Oak Island as Rick Lagina stood at the edge of history, his weathered hands trembling, not from the cold, but from what lay before him. For centuries, this cursed island had guarded its secrets, claiming treasure hunters, swallowing fortunes, and breaking dreams. But today, something was different. Today, the island was about to surrender what it had hidden for over 700 years. Deep beneath his feet, something ancient stirred in the darkness, something that had been waiting, sealed behind stone and time, for this exact moment. Rick didn't know it yet, but he was about to unlock a door that would change everything, not just about Oak Island, but about history itself. The Knights Templar's greatest secret was about to see daylight for the first time since 1307. Before we reveal what Rick discovered behind that ancient door, hit that like button and subscribe, because you're about to witness the find of a lifetime. At 140 feet below the windswept surface, the drills struck something that didn't belong. It wasn't crumbled shale or fractured limestone. It was smooth, too smooth. A perfectly flat slab, locked into place like a puzzle piece no natural force could ever create. The crew paused. Rick stepped forward, brushing away damp earth with his gloved hands, his breath clouding in the cold air. What lay before them was no accident of geology. It was the shape of intention. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed what everyone already felt in their bones. A rectangular void stretched behind the slab, an empty space where no empty space should exist. The readouts glowed on the monitor, each contour mapping a secret cavity waiting just beyond reach. Marty muttered that it looked like a room. Rick whispered back, "Not a room. A doorway." Analysis came fast. Iron traces embedded within the stone pointed to forged hinge fragments, metal crafted by human hands, not nature. Even after centuries underground, the signature of blacksmith fire lingered. Rick's mind raced to the stone triangle mystery discovered on the island in the 19th century, dismissed as coincidence by skeptics. What if that surface triangle had been a compass, aligned to lead straight here? The team exchanged glances, silent, each realizing the same truth. The so-called metaphorical door spoken of in journals and tales was no metaphor at all. It was real, an engineered gate, hidden for centuries, waiting for this very moment of discovery. The legends surrounding this discovery ran deeper than anyone imagined. Long before Europeans set foot on these shores, Mi'kmaq oral traditions spoke of a sleeping gate buried deep within the island, sealed by spirits of fire and water. Elders warned that whoever disturbed it would unleash both fortune and curse. Rick couldn't shake the weight of those words now, standing at the threshold. It wasn't just local lore. In brittle French explorer journals from the 1600s, written in shaky ink and faded hand, one line jumped out: "A door of stone, sealed with oil and blood." Scholars once dismissed it as superstition, but here, inches from their hands, was a slab that fit the description perfectly. Rick and Marty compared notes, drawing connections to medieval traditions where holy relics and forbidden treasures were hidden beneath fortified chapels, guarded not by soldiers, but by walls and symbols. Could this island be their final outpost, their archive, their sanctuary? The crew remembered countless reports of flickering lantern lights across the swamp and pit over the centuries, ghostly warnings or something else. Looking at the door now, the truth struck harder. Those weren't hauntings, they were guardianship, shadows protecting the island's greatest secret. What chilled them most was the realization dawning in real time. Oak Island was never simply booby-trapped for deterrence. It had been ceremonially engineered, a fusion of faith, science, and secrecy woven into stone. The final confirmation lay in the markings themselves. Close inspection of the slab revealed concentric circles etched with precision, stars carefully aligned, and crosses repeated in deliberate sequence. Not random scratches, not miners' graffiti, something mathematical. Experts were brought in, tracing the designs, and soon a shocking parallel emerged. The symbols weren't decoration. They resembled a cipher wheel, a mechanical code, the kind the Knights Templar were rumored to use to lock and unlock their most guarded vaults between the years 1100 and 1300. Rick studied the alignment further and froze. The carvings matched the night sky of 1307, the very year the Templars were betrayed and hunted across Europe. Coincidence, or a time stamp left in stone to mark the moment their secret fled west? The resemblance to Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland was undeniable. Arches, stars, and crosses carved with the same geometric intention. History whispered through stone, across oceans, across centuries. Weeks of reconstruction work brought the team to a stunning realization. These weren't just symbols to read. They were part of a functioning system, a primitive lock built into the slab itself, waiting for the right sequence to release it. Not just a door, but a code-protected gateway hidden beneath Oak Island for over 700 years. But understanding the mechanism was only the beginning. LiDAR swept its light over the slab, stripping away centuries of mystery in digital layers, and the results silenced the entire team. The stone wasn't a simple barrier wedged into earth by collapse. It was interlocked with gear-like teeth, each meshing perfectly into the surrounding bedrock. Not even the most skeptical voice could deny it now. This was deliberate architecture, a precision build hidden beneath mud and seawater for 700 years. The scan further revealed the slab's hinge points, reinforced with metal, unlike anything native to Nova Scotia. Samples showed an alloy mix identical to Iberian forges from medieval Spain, a region where the Knights Templar had flourished before their sudden downfall. Marty, still unconvinced, muttered that perhaps some later post-Columbian engineer had hidden something here centuries after the Templars. But radiocarbon dating crushed the theory. Oak fragments taken from support timbers sealed behind the slab came back locked into a timeline between 1290 and 1310, precisely the years when the order was driven underground. The math didn't lie. What they stood before was not colonial trickery, not pirate carpentry, but a medieval gate buried long before Columbus ever touched American shores. Hydraulic simulations calculated the weight of the slab at more than 20 tons. Medieval builders shouldn't have had the technology to move such a structure with this level of precision, yet here it stood, engineered to resist water, gravity, and time. Rick ran his hand across the carvings one last time and spoke what everyone now knew. This was not a trap. This was a door, concealed with intention, crafted with foresight, and waiting for the right moment in history to be revealed. The moment of truth arrived with electric intensity. As drills pierced the slab's edge, a hiss erupted, compressed air bursting free like the last exhale of a dying giant. The chamber behind had been sealed so perfectly that its breath had been trapped for centuries. The air reeked metallic and stale, carrying chemical traces of pitch, cedar oil, and something more sinister. Gas sensors lit up, registering mercury vapor in the confined space. Historians knew the Templars had used mercury both to preserve relics and as a deterrent against intruders. The toxic warning lingered in the air, daring them to turn back. Rick steadied the team. His voice was calm, but beneath it lay the weight of centuries. Whatever lay inside was designed to last, not to invite discovery. He reminded them they were prying open something meant to remain untouched, sealed by hands that believed in oaths stronger than life itself. The drillers continued, the slab groaning as fractures spider-webbed through its surface. Dust swirled into the lamp's beams, mixing with the stale air, until finally a fragment broke away. Through the gap, they could see it, blackness deeper than night. Not the absence of light, but the presence of something heavy, waiting. A splinter of oak beam was recovered from within, and lab results dated it squarely between 1290 and 1310. It aligned with the exact moment the Templars vanished from European strongholds, their treasure fleets unaccounted for, their archives erased. The connection was undeniable. What had disappeared in Europe may have reappeared here, in this hidden chamber beneath Oak Island. Then, with one final push, the slab shifted loose, sliding against stone teeth, and the void opened wide. After centuries of silence, the gate had yielded. Stepping through the threshold was like entering another world. The first step inside was suffocating. Torchlight spilled across smooth walls that shimmered faintly, plastered with lime to repel water. It was an ancient waterproofing technique known in Mediterranean architecture, never before seen in the New World during this era. Whoever built this knew how to fight against the ocean itself. Red pigments stained the plaster in faded, ghost-like images, solar discs, crescent moons, and a seven-pointed star glowing faintly under the light. Rick recognized them instantly, their geometry echoing the esoteric seal of Solomon, a symbol tied to forbidden wisdom and mystical guardianship. Wooden scaffolding lined the tunnel, the beams fitted with advanced joinery no colonial craftsman could have mastered. The cuts and mortise joints spoke of an organized workforce, trained and deliberate, not desperate diggers hiding stolen loot. Each beam whispered of a greater plan, an entire order working in secrecy to shape this place into something more than a vault. It was a sanctuary, a monument in darkness. Then came the smell, subtle but undeniable, not the rot of damp earth, but resin and incense clinging to the air. Tar and oil, yes, but also the sweet ghost of something burned in ceremony, as if the chamber itself had once been consecrated. The scent curled through the torch's smoke, reminding the men that what they'd entered wasn't just a tunnel. It was ritual space, constructed with reverence, guarded by symbols, locked behind impossible doors. As they ventured deeper, the tunnel widened suddenly into a dome-shaped chamber, and at once the crew noticed the acoustics. Every shuffle of a boot, every cautious breath, echoed and multiplied against the stone. A single whisper became a chorus, a reminder that this space was never meant to be silent. It had been engineered to carry sound, to transform words into something larger, perhaps prayers, oaths, or chants, meant to bind the chamber in ritual. Rick ran his lamp along the walls, and there they were, small alcoves cut into the stone, shallow niches that once held objects of meaning. Inside, fragments remained, rusted daggers with blades flaked away to nothing, chain links blackened by time, pottery shards with traces of paint. Nothing whole, but nothing random either. Offerings, deposits, remnants of a culture determined to leave signposts in the dark. Soil samples told the rest of the story. The earth was heavy with ash, thick layers of carbonized remains mixed into the floor itself. Analysis would later reveal burned wood, bone fragments, and traces of oils not native to Nova Scotia. This chamber had been lit by flame, perhaps many times over. Ritual burning had taken place here, not to destroy, but to consecrate. The fire had left its mark not only on the stone, but in the very atmosphere, a heaviness that clung to every torch flame flickering against the dome. At the heart of the room stood a dais, raised slightly above the ground, cut with such geometric precision that it could never be mistaken for decoration. Grooves spiraled outward, shallow but deliberate, as though designed for something to be aligned upon it. Weight, balance, pressure. Rick knelt, tracing the channels with his fingertips. This was no altar in the religious sense. It was mechanical, part of the greater system. The suspicion grew when a crewman struck the dais lightly with a metal rod. The sound that followed was unmistakable. A deep, resonant boom, hollow beneath the surface. The chamber was sitting atop another cavity, a deeper space waiting below, sealed behind the puzzle of this dais. The floor revealed its secret through patience and observation. Beneath the dust and debris, interlocked panels emerged, each one fitted so tightly against the next that it appeared seamless. But closer inspection showed the truth. They were carved in a labyrinthine pattern, each line intersecting like a riddle set in stone. Rick crouched, running his hand along faint grooves that bore subtle wear marks, as though centuries of pressure had shifted them ever so slightly. The panels weren't static. They were designed to move, sliding into place if weight was applied correctly. The resemblance to known Templar engineering was uncanny. In Portuguese castles built by the Order, historians had recorded accounts of trapdoor puzzles concealed beneath chapels, staircases hidden in plain sight that only revealed themselves when the proper stones were pressed in sequence. Here on Oak Island, across an ocean and centuries away, the same genius had been at work. Recognition didn't lessen the risk. The team stood back, debating their next step. Marty warned that miscalculating the sequence could collapse the chamber. If the floor wasn't designed to move smoothly, forcing it could trigger a failure that buried them alive. Yet Rick argued that the precision of the design was proof of its purpose. It wasn't meant to kill those who understood it. It was meant to protect against those who didn't. Timbers were laid carefully across pressure points to distribute weight, creating a balance across the labyrinth. Every placement was measured, every adjustment debated, until at last the moment came. A groan rumbled through the chamber, dust shaking loose from the dome as one section of the floor slid backward, retracting like a massive stone drawer. Torchlights spilled downward, illuminating stairs carved by hand, descending deeper into darkness. The breath of the chamber shifted as new air flowed up, colder and sharper, as though the earth itself had exhaled. Step by step, the crew descended, the narrow staircase taking them to a smaller passage that ended at something both breathtaking and foreboding. Before them stood another barrier, a door of oak thickened with iron, sealed tight with pitch that still gleamed dark after centuries. Reinforced crossbars spanned its width, proof of strength and warning in one. This wasn't a casual barrier, it was a fortress wall, built on a smaller scale. The details spoke louder than the construction itself. The hinges bore a double cross insignia, the same design carved into Templar gravestones scattered across France, a mark of identity and ownership that left no doubt. Here was a direct signature of the Order, stamped upon the very threshold of the island's deepest secret. Above the door, carved into the stone lintel, Latin words stood in stark permanence. Solus fidelis transit, indignus peribit. Translated, it read, "Only the faithful may pass, the unworthy shall perish." The warning gave them pause, but Rick's resolve never wavered. He reminded them that Oak Island had never been about mere gold or relics. Every artifact, every signpost, every chamber uncovered told the same story. This was about guardianship. This was about protecting something larger than wealth, something that demanded loyalty, secrecy, and sacrifice. And here, in this narrow stairwell before the iron-bound door, they weren't just unsealing a vault. They were stepping across the threshold into the very heart of the Guardian's design. The iron-bound door loomed like a test of faith, its oak heart sealed in darkness for centuries. Sparks erupted as plasma cutters roared to life, biting into the crossbars one by one. The chamber filled with the smell of burning metal, every cut a violation of a silence that had endured for generations. Each strike sent vibrations through the stone walls, as though the chamber itself was resisting intrusion. The final bar gave way with a metallic shriek, crashing to the floor in a spray of ember-like sparks. Then came the pitch. Thick, tarry seams that had held the door shut for half a millennium. Heated blades sliced into the resin, and with a sudden crack like breaking bone, the seal fractured. A rush of stale air surged out, but it was not foul or stagnant. It carried the faint aroma of cedar, preserved in the dark like incense. The scent alone proved deliberate preservation, an ancient method of guarding contents against time. The door groaned open, hinges protesting, until the gap widened enough for floodlights to pierce the interior. What they saw stole the breath from the room. Inside, stone shelves were carved directly into the chamber walls, stacked in orderly precision. Upon them sat vessels of bronze and clay, chests bound with iron straps, and reliquaries shaped like miniature shrines. The geometry was too meticulous to be random. This was a library of wealth, an archive disguised as a vault. As light swept across the shelves, gold flared from countless surfaces, coins spilling from open containers, the corners of hammered ingots glinting, chalices catching every reflection. The sheer density of artifacts made it impossible to process at once. It was not scattered treasure, but curated placement, each object catalogued by some hand long gone. Crew members froze, overwhelmed not only by the gleam, but by the realization of what had been preserved so carefully. Moving carefully inside, the team began cataloging what would prove to be one of history's greatest archaeological discoveries. The first items they encountered were reliquaries of carved gold, their surfaces inlaid with sapphires, rubies, and pearls. The craftsmanship suggested they once held relics of immense sanctity, bone fragments, shards of the true cross, or saintly remains. Their very existence implied that Oak Island had served as a sanctuary for holy treasures spirited away during the Templar suppression. Stacks of hammered gold ingots lined the lower shelves, each stamped with mint marks not of England or Spain, but of medieval Portugal. Cross-referencing symbols suggested dates between the 12th and 13th centuries, aligning perfectly with the Templars' maritime expansion. Each ingot alone was worth hundreds of thousands, but collectively, their historical significance was immeasurable. Sealed scroll tubes, still capped with wax, were found clustered in wooden crates. One had cracked open slightly, revealing rolled parchment within. If the ink survived, these could be Templar codices, shipping manifests, or perhaps even internal charters thought destroyed during the Papal Purge. The idea that written Templar records had been smuggled across the Atlantic was staggering, proof that their network extended further than historians ever dared claim. Alongside them were ceremonial swords with hilts encrusted in gemstones and chalices fashioned from pure silver rimmed in emeralds. These were not battle gear or common items, they were regalia of ritual, designed for rites and ceremonies. Their placement within the vault confirmed that this chamber was not for commerce. It was sacred wealth, a treasury serving both faith and secrecy. Preliminary estimates pushed the value of the chamber's holdings beyond $90 million, yet the dollar figure was dwarfed by its cultural magnitude. These were artifacts of lost Christendom, objects that bridged myth and reality. For historians, the chamber was a revelation. For treasure hunters, it was the culmination of centuries of obsession. But as scanning equipment probed the surrounding stone, anomalies appeared on the readouts that suggested this incredible discovery was only the beginning. Behind one wall of the vault, the density shifted. There were cavities beyond, sealed and untouched. The outlines suggested not a small extension, but adjoining vaults, possibly an entire warren of chambers waiting in silence. Most compelling was the discovery of a second, carved outline along the far wall. Unlike the smaller oaken iron door, this one was massive, the stone chiseling clear even after centuries. It implied an entrance on a scale far beyond what they had already breached. Where the current vault stored treasures in curated order, this greater doorway hinted at something else entirely: an archive, a repository of knowledge and relics too vast for a single chamber. Rick studied the markings with narrowed eyes, his voice steady as he theorized aloud. This was not a treasure hoard in the traditional sense. It was an underground archive, constructed by exiled Templars to preserve not only their wealth, but their wisdom, their faith, and their secrets. What they had found was likely only a fraction of a network stretching across oceans, mirrored in other lands, perhaps linked by secret voyages that history erased. The revelation was staggering. If Oak Island held not just treasure, but knowledge, a record of a suppressed order, then the implications reached far beyond Nova Scotia. It would mean that the island was one node in a global hidden system, a secret library built beneath the very feet of history. As the crew prepared to withdraw from the chamber, their footsteps echoed in the hollow dome, whispers multiplying once more against the engineered acoustics. Those echoes seemed less like sound and more like a reminder. Oak Island never reveals its secrets all at once. It demands patience, endurance, and above all, respect. The vault they had opened was not the end, but the beginning of something far larger. A mystery that had only deepened with discovery, promising revelations that could rewrite our understanding of medieval history and the true reach of the Knights Templar across the Atlantic, centuries before Columbus ever set sail.